Achio, lovely Sunday, baby. Don't look at you. I know one question. What I say. And if it's the first time, when me don't look in the invest with my follow me Facebook, don't look. Who could eat you? Don't look. Subscribe, man. What? Over TikTok, I don't look. When I was so there, checking. Who could Instagram at the _ don't look. Now that my guy don't. And come over and any day. We say ever since somebody sir D Levy by in simple pre. Now, me fe unsa ade ne ba for na ye mu bebiri kwa no ye react say enye later na yinya mu nchiremu na afi ye bagi tum enti sisi nchiremu no se ko ma nye me hu se ko ma nchiremu ne baya ka Ghana for tum straight because owe e car e da wa hu feles kwachi feles ofusu kwachi wa be kire nsemu kakra a me pese hu e car e da wo sometimes wo kire nsemu na yiti wo versus miracles aboaje o se wan wa sa ko bi no na ma yombo nkuntumbu nko anu twinoto wantuma mi na no kra nkasa even coronavirus ba ya nanado beka se wa chair light kwa ye omunyisu light fini na e ka oburugu ho a wantua na ne bi tua saka no me be yi ni na kire what ase se de ye be ka kire be se betena se ana me the video se bremo a e admaku ba ko pe magma travel to oni kula me magma travel to the don so open Dubai bia be di holidays o be ye business visa bia o pa be Dubai bia ono a o pe tikita ko wiase bia ono a sama be amanfo be ko holidays unye obi manage tikita mo a ono a say sometimes o be ka send this scam me o be send this scam ma no ati odi Dubai akura wo kwado mutuma fake ticket o fo obi ticket no aye copy and paste no da shim o mutuma fake visa won hu bi don o mutuma nkofo ba no ma be stranded don magma de ebi ni o package mamo mo pese mo ba o ma 2 man visa no ma o ticket ubedu na adwuma nya ready club bia beton na be rent amon no say twes kam agent for mo adwuma no say adwuma na agent for dia ma ansa na 2 man visa be hundie na adwuma na yon krata ma don pay na pay nti magma de o pese o ba Dubai na be bobra magma o ba Dubai o ma stranded o ma overstar magma what I say don emodo na men semre no tie
it's totally understandable because we are talking about people who have endured terrible hardships in the last 8 years. Taxes have been piled upon them. Their cost of living has gone through the roof. And they have endured a lot of suffering.
Okay.
Which, in any event, was the reason why they booted out everything in the manner that they did. So it is to be expected that any additional measure would attract some concern. And we respect that fully. Except that we are at a juncture that requires decisive action.
Okay.
Otherwise, this whole economy will be brought down by the energy sector. Something. It is true that there's inefficiency, and I will speak to some of it. There are horrible criminal happenings at ECG and elsewhere that have led us to this particular juncture.
Okay.
Something. Even before this government took over, and let me stress that there's a government that has been before we took over. To begin with, we had to deal with what we call energy legacy debt.
What is
of 6 to 7 billion Ghana cedis. That even before we lifted the finger, the government.
What is
now? This is not debt that you can ignore. You have to pay.
Thank you.
And it piles on for as long as it remains on your books. And it is not as though we have done nothing about it. Something this year, if you look at the budget, the finance minister is giving the energy minister 23 billion Ghana cedis to settle part of this debt. 23 billion Ghana cedis.
Asema okay, Obwa na budget na mem yanko.
Now this debt has come about.
Okay.
Because as we all know, and we don't talk about it much, but as we all know, even if ECG collected all the monies due them, the money will not be up to how much is spent to produce power and distribute it.
Okay.
If ECG collected all the money, and that is because of the way that the tariff is structured. That is the first point. So, under recoveries is one of the reasons why we have the 67 billion Ghana cedis. And this has been there for decades.
What?
The second point is that arising out of deliberate policy of the Akufo-Addo administration, this legacy debt was compounded. For many years, a critical component for producing power, which is the purchase of fuel, was not added to the tariff. The president and cabinet took a decision that consumers should not pay for that. But government will pay for it.
Okay.
They did not pay for it.
That's
so all the liquid fuel they bought.
22 coronavirus time na oka say we tie sika no. Okay. You need to light free no man tia and once no can.
Significant part of it remains unpaid for. So it is debt.
What
that you and I have to show that.
What it?
The criminal mismanagement of the exchange rate, I heard about me, I was saying this mismanagement of the exchange rates led to a situation where between July 2022 to November that year, the dollar or the cedi exchange at the dollar was 17 cedis. It goes from 6 cedis to a dollar to 7 cedis. That is an addition of 11 cedis. And you know that IPPs are paid in dollars.
Okay.
And some of the inputs into power generation are bought in dollars. So once this happened, huge debt was accrued.
That's it.
And of course, there's the ECG collection. Something you recall that the Abu Farouk Bami administration claimed that they had reduced electricity tariff sometime in 2018. It was not because the factors that led to production had reduced in terms of their cost. They just asked the ECD to reduce the electricity tariff. In order to make that sustainable, they should have paid the difference. It should have been a subsidy. So they didn't pay. So it added to this debt. You remember that during COVID, they said that they had reduced electricity prices to cushion the consumer. It is all well and good to do so. But they needed to pay for the cost of producing that electricity. Something they did not pay. Then fuel that has been supplied.
They
didn't pay. In addition to the Samsung.
One say Enuntina na MP before say I Mahama ba a cabida so nyenti aka no otuatua no aka because omunum so ma broke ego into tuaka na ni nsam sika besa
gas fields. You know that in order to get the project going, we needed to establish a guarantee. What they call a partial risk guarantee. It cost $500 million. And actually the World Bank gave us money to do so. But it was not a gift.
Yes.
It was something that had to be paid. In addition to this, GMPC also brought $120 million. Making it $620 million. Then the car power arrangement also required a guarantee. So Letasco produced $170 million in guarantee. Again, because of the criminal mismanagement of the economy, they did not pay the players in this sector. So the players drew down on this guarantee. In excess of $800 million. But those guarantees must be restored. Exactly. An IMF
miracle why say so you this time we talking about fact and
the plug should be put on IMF program because we owe these amounts. So these guarantees have to be re-established. If you put all of this together, you get $67 billion, which is debt that must be paid. Government this year is giving the energy ministry $23 billion. So if we continue on that trajectory in 3 years, we should pay it off. But something, if this were the only problem, it would not have been an issue because we are showing clear commitment that we in addition to this, every year as we go forward, there's a shortfall in the electricity sector. Meaning that there's a certain amount of money that must be paid because of how the tariff is structured. The critical one is the purchase of fuel. So forget about what has built up before we came to power. This year, $1.2 billion has to be coughed up by governments in order capacity is necessary if you are going to keep the system running. And I told you that the excess capacity that we left have been exhausted as we speak. So imagine what would have happened, given that they themselves didn't add much, if we didn't have that excess capacity. So that argument is shallow populism. It is propaganda. The problem we have does not arise out of that. It is because they criminally mismanage the economy. Look, this November price I'm putting, it went there because the city tanked, the city collapsed. Finally, something. Again, he speaks about cost of living, claiming that items have gone up. Something. What have we done in the last 5 months as a government that would have contributed to this? The factors that account for price on the market, which of them has worsened since we came to power? So it does not make sense to attribute anything to this government. And then finally,
What they can occur say NDC for bars. Ede be enema ntutumu aba enema ntutumu ba ye betuma ka say yatete ne yamaso se nye enema nyina so na atete kra sectors bi nema akofom ba wunya ba bia betuma ka say MP NDC ba ye 5 months enam enema bi omu yenti yatoto ne yamam se the first now to see yatoto ne yamam no what be on TV no kura nkwa na de na mo yanko anim.
When I speak about criminal mismanagement, you see ECG, it is true that they make historical losses.
Okay.
But under them, the things that happen in ECG are criminal. ECG is an entirely 100% own state utility.
That's it.
It is the government that appoints the MD and the board.
Yes.
Indeed. Until we came to power, the board was chaired by a prominent MPP politician. Not so. Check the operations of ECG. Something. In 2023, ECG itself said they will do procurement to the level of 935 million. Planning. Despite this plan, they did procurement of up to 8.3 billion Ghana cedis this year before, which essentially means that they incurred debt. In 2024, they budgeted 1.4 billion. They did 8.2 billion.
Okay,
which means that they had incurred debt. You know that ECG has a shipping department, which is responsible for clearing containers of goods that will bring. Despite the existence of they bypassed them, went to sign a contract with a private entity, and pay them 159 million Ghana cedis to do the same way that shipping department can do. Okay. Again, ECG needs staff annually to do its work. We agree. Under them, they imported cables that they don't need for the next 15 years. This is criminal. Again, when you say
maybe kasa. Ofaso ya twa erabina yesi abed intro and bebu man. Sisi amanfo afa me hotan. Akọ eba TikTok baby because na se migina keteche fifa so. Me ka kire mo se keteche fifa be ka no kura yi nyina no so. Obeye bibisi ama factor yi nyina no so. Ba se oba be tumfutu agu nkofo ne ye don't remember dozen. Enti MPP for na mo adwen ye mo se me NDC ni nti mo ba me YouTube channel so be na I will subscribe you me kura me mpe ko. Ye be ka no kura age minus you. Won ka da ho. So won ka ye be COVID time o ka se ye nyu like dey nyina ye ka da ho. Akufo do be fans do be campaign o mo do be campaign say o mama ye kan ye free ana ye ka da ho no it is aka we ni MPP NDC nya aban ho obeja kanato NDC pese o ma Ghana yiyi it oba o try say obe force aso we say sia by iska o mchama atofo the chama elegy minister no e kote kan so bi ana o ka say o mo ye ne sakura in a speed of 3 years no kan o betima yi kan free o World Bank fa de ma o free o e so ye kwaje ya na e discount ye mfa ntria na se de to ambulance na World Bank be ma ne aton ba ne aton ne ye nkan anu ntum don ye MPP ne ye NDC ye Ghana for ye be kan ko de ma mi hu adwen kire wo ho eti wo des no senkan na me ka senkan chichire mu se baya ka Ghana for te ase e ka we wan na betua nye ne betua ye ne betua eti se wotuma tipetro su huma ba se ya first 1 gallon we say me say hu obi na auto 1 gallon almost 100 cedis 95 cedis and a new 50 cedis kura. So when the 70 cedis kura na man also budget den anke asembe 1 gallon now turn to 95 cedis and a new 50 cedis. It would the emphasis you save 45 cedis 50 cedis kura save 45 cedis. Now so yen tibim fan a car MPP for na abono o musi enjai o say MPP ba o maka say e dollar na so tete o musi NDC for spending o mu mika o mabo enti o mu say o de saka we nya na NDC for aka so o mu tuatua se ne mo be say o ye nya sika kura wo economy no o wa bro mu die enti sika kura ba o mu nsema e se o mu de tuo mu ntua na o mu burugu o sa enti se ko mu wini ya na o makova ti obi ante enti o mu lusu a wa ba be fa kunya no na asema be to so enti bo say o first 4 years no o be battle so be so ma ne ma ye na Ghana fo ahunyansa no mo sa kwato mo bi no mo sa be se no don MPP fo mo yensie wo mo yensie MPP fo mo ma MPP fo ntina opposition more than 2 terms no o mbe hwenyansa e woni tirim se 2028 o Mahama wini kura na the next 4 years ye na eba se pabe 4 years twam 8 years twam no mo ma power they will o mbe hwenyansa because ya we o mo hwenyansa ho to lina no mutwa mo so mo se mo ada age nam se kateje fifa tum begimi o me side no we minya yo ne mo kan tre kateje fifa ne so won de wonya agimi no wonya sa akwa bi na ne tiri mo basa bi o ti UK ama se why yi bi o TikTok obi o ti abuchiri on kura en no bi konso mra on kotena abuchiri why ne tiri asem se memetia ne eskan me nkofo na de ndien se maska me obi afa koma police wo kura wo ba social media so da ben memetia social media so nyene so obi se maska me na wo na wo de bro fa ko police Ghana embassy wo kuruma e wo Dubai It will be about Dubai or some scam and often Ghana embassy. Na Ghana embassy, my Dubai police match me. And then when some propaganda site to chant off any person. And I'm some 2 foot rogun go for near stop Puntino. Bones are back cancer, Mrs. Cameron, Mocatum Munayo. Was a many archipelagos and archipelago, and I don't tell you a scam, Mon cancer for them fat. Media Messeno claim Media Musa, Media ambulance by the Namokai. Monsieur Babbage, Chimeboa, ambulance with me Ghana. Don't me and me crown of Cran come on to no more than Tronomon and Tina Jimmy Mammy. But no cran body beer. Don't video me by Mammy who are drinking what. We are here to save Ghana. And Casso, a more do don't. Oh, beer, eh. Or bow. So, Bashata don't you. Oh, da. Mammy, what yes, I blew at it. Napa.